cosmic rays, guided by etheric ancestors of melanated people, bombard Earth, causing hyperpigmentation in the global populace. What up, and welcome to Ralph Reads, brought to you by TURN, the United Ronin Networks. My name is Ralph Anthony Garcia, also known as R4, the legal, the loyal, the regal, the royal, Ronin Ralph, your master of ceremonies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tune in to TURN, the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. On today's edition of Ralph Reads, I continue reading Sister Souljah's Midnight, a Gangster love story, in this, the 7th installment. No need to spend 1 sixpence to let the reading commence. Chapter 29. Thursday dissolved so quickly. The day just flew by, filled with usual and unusual errands and familiar and unfamiliar faces. For the first time, Umma and Naja were not sleeping at home. I had escorted both of them to the Palace Hotel. Umma and Naja would remain there with the family of the bride who had arrived earlier in the day from the Sudan. There were 5 rooms booked under the bride's father's name, and 3 rooms under the groom's father's name, not including Fawzi's incredible suite. There would be an Islamic gathering, males hosted separately from the females. The goal was clear for Umma. She was working for the groom to make the bride's family feel comfortable in an unfamiliar place. She was to do what she does best, make everything look and smell and feel beautiful. I felt relieved after I left them safely in the palace. I told myself that I could feel relieved like this every day once I had both of them out of the area in Brooklyn where we lived. I had already decided that the week after the wedding, we would begin looking at various affordable properties since we would be in clear reach of our financial goal. My day was spent traveling and meeting up with and checking in on independent contractors who were retained to perform some service or other for the huge wedding ceremony on Sunday. However, even training at the dojo and practicing with the basketball team, I felt lighter with Umma and Naja safely tucked away and surrounded by people who at least in general believed the same exact things. No surprises. Last night alone, I played my music in the apartment. I could walk around with my shirt off. I could exercise in my underwear. In my bedroom, I could throw my knives without a second thought with the bedroom door open. After my repetitions, I could collapse on the floor, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Akemi. Her phone call began with her silence, then just her breathing, then words. She was thanking me. That part I could tell. Those were the only words she said that I understood. The words that followed were all in Japanese, but she seemed so sure about speaking her language to me. I just listened to her soft sound, which slowed down and then sped up, suddenly excited. I decided from her rhythm and melody that she received the balloons, maybe even the flowers I had sent to the uncle's store. That she would come along with me on Saturday after work to the ceremony. Her call ended strangely with her silence. Then I could hear her breathing, a pause, then the words, Mayonaka, Ashiteru. The next sound was the click. I wanted to know the meaning of her last word, but I didn't. I wanted to know from where and what time to pick her up, but I didn't. While I was thinking about whether or not to call her back this late at her cousin's house, my phone rang again.
Akemi insisted on calling you first. Now it's me.
It was her cousin. How are you? I asked her.
Okay, I think,
she answered.
Anyway, there are balloons everywhere. All over my house,
she said. Do you like them? I asked her.
It really doesn't matter. Akemi loves them. She is thrilled, and no one can even talk to her. They're very nice, really,
she admitted, reluctantly it seemed. Will she be able to come on Saturday? I asked.
Who can stop her? She was supposed to do something here at our house with our family, since we're all out of school and work. But she will come to you on Saturday, no doubt. Uncle has said that if Akemi wants to go along with your family, then I had to go along with you too. I don't want to cancel my plans, so I don't know what is going to happen. I'll let you know,
she said. One question, I caught the cousin before she hung up the phone. Ashiteru, what does this word mean?
Did Akemi say this to you?
The cousin asked. I paused instead of answering her question.
I don't know. Maybe you were pronouncing it wrong,
she said.
I have to go now.
She hung up. On Saturday at 5 p.m., when I rounded the corner to the Palace Hotel, she was standing there. Even though her cousin had phoned me at the very last minute to ask me about the address, I was still stunned. She was standing taller than usual, and the first thing I noticed were her incredibly expensive black ostrich-skinned stiletto heels and matching black ostrich clutch bag. She wore a silk black dress, which was well tailored to her figure and cut short just below her hips. She wrapped her waistline with a beautiful silver gray scarf, causing her mini dress to ride up even higher. Thankfully, she wore matching black silk capris underneath, covering her legs. Her dark eyes came out more with the coordination of her clothes. They were like an endless sea of beauty. Her natural nails were manicured immaculately with a clear polish with a hint of a gray sheen that could only be noticed if you looked closely. Her jet black hair, the way it flowed and surrounded the jet black dress, and the way her jet black eyes peered from her face, I was floored by her. I felt everything shifting within me. Still, I managed to appear cool. Playfully, I walked past her as if she wasn't standing right there. She called out my name softly, as if I could have missed seeing her standing there. She followed behind me quietly. Even the sound of her heels against the pavement caught my attention and aroused me. Yet, it was impossible for me to follow my natural instincts. I should have ordered a magic carpet. Her shoes alone were too expensive for the ground, I thought to myself. In the lobby of the hotel, I pulled the silver gray scarf she had wrapped tightly around her waistline of her dress and put it over her hair instead, tying it in the back. She was still and allowed me. We were standing so close that her scent gave me fever. The way I tied it wasn't a Muslim style of wearing the scarf, but it was fashionable the way Akemi would rock it. It complimented her while covering her hair, as all of the women in the ceremony would have their hair covered. Truthfully, I wanted to cover her hair. I had begun to feel that it was mine for only me to see, and that she was mine also. The elevator door opened, revealing Umma and Naja. Umma was a radiant star. Her silver thobe, made of an elegant and fine sheer cloth, was a sparkling outer garment to her long silver gray dress beneath. During the 2.5 days of our separation, she had applied a beautiful henna design to her fingers, hands, and feet. Her style and beauty had everyone passing through the Palace Hotel lobby in complete awe. 2 curious and fascinated European ladies interrupted her, delaying her from reaching us. I introduced Akemi to Umma and Naja in Arabic. Instinctively, Akemi bowed her head down to Umma. When she raised it up, she reached out to Umma's hands and flipped them over, feeling her palms with her fingers, her eyes showing complete amazement at Umma's henna art. Even after several seconds, Akemi was still staring and holding Umma's wrists. Umma smiled, adjusted her hand to hold Akemi's, and began walking away with her, only saying to me in Arabic,
"We will see you tonight at the ceremony. I love you, son."
Naja held back and said,
"She is so pretty."
"She don't speak English," I informed Naja, "and she doesn't know what's happening here today."
"Well, she should fit right in."
Naja laughed. I gave Naja a kiss on the cheek and told her, "Take good care of Akemi. then sent her on her way to catch up with the ladies. In Fawzy's suite, I warmly greeted the Sudanese men gathered there in the living room. I felt like I was not myself. Right then, I was my father in his private area of our estate, greeting his guests and business associates, a gathering of men in the finest suits and the most elegant traditional wear as well, surrounding by swirling cigar, cigarette, and beady smoke. The quiet murmur of the men speaking only the important words, following through on previous agreements and making new plans and details filled the suite. In the foyer, I pulled out a heavy wooden chair with a dense cushion that was covered by a thick upholstery embroidered with the scene of the bland British ancients. I sat down. I needed to be seated close to the telephone. Discreetly, I began calling business numbers on a long checklist that I had prepared to make sure that every detail was absolutely covered for tomorrow's wedding. There were the tent builders who had already constructed the wedding site. I needed to confirm the tent takedown and the final payment date. There were the painters, 2 Sudanese and 2 Iranians whose services Umma and I contacted. I needed to push those guys. They did great work, but were scheduled to complete their job yesterday morning. Yesterday evening, when I phoned them, I found them still finishing up, which delayed me from arranging their payment. The fruit, flour, and candy deliveries for tomorrow morning needed to be reconfirmed, even though I had confirmed them yesterday. The portable commode people needed a confirmation as well. And then there was the company where we rented the chairs. I had an hour and a half before the limousines will arrive here at the palace, so I used my time effectively. When the groom's uncle, Mr. Ghazali, arrived, he and I would get squared away with all of the checks that needed to be issued to pay the various independent contractors. We would go over the details once more so that everything would flow as planned. Souljah. Limousines lined the cluttered streets of New York and brought the business at the Palace Hotel to a standstill. Seated inside of one of them, I watched Umma, Akemi, and Naja entering another limo with some women from the bride's family. Akemi was the last to get in. She stood watching everything as though she were not a part of it. She looked left to right, stared at the woman from head to toe, and eventually gazed up at the sky. I traveled with Fawzy, his father and uncle, and 2 male cousins. Fawzy's father was intense and pensive, the way powerful men, like my father, tend to be. He and his son were dressed to the nines in tuxedos. I had chosen a clean black Armani suit. All of our white shirts were glistening. Uncle Ghazali and his 2 sons all wore white jalabias. Believe me, they were looking sharp and crisp as well. There was not one speck to blemish the bright whiteness of their cloths. On the floor of the limo were 6 pairs of brand new shoes, ranging from Mr. Ghazali's JCPenney's to Fawzy and his father's mean and authentic black crocodiles. I felt powerful, seated among all of them, although my status was the same today as it was yesterday.
A small ceremony for the mosque for the signing of the Ajid,
Umma has said.
Nothing compared to the actual wedding ceremony.
The spacious, medium-sized mosque was filled up with the groom and bride's relatives. Despite the expensive wares, when the call to prayer, the azan, was sung out in complete unity, the Umma bowed their heads to the ground and made salat. The feeling was so unexpected and awesome to be welcomed into a mosque and make prayer among an international Islamic community right here in America. I felt overwhelmed. There was such incredible power in the call to prayer. It humbled even the richest of the believers. The words entered the body, aroused the spirit, and soothed the soul. They caused the knees to willingly bend, and the head to touch the ground in the way that no believing man would bow for any other reason, any other time. Imam Musa was in Jalabiya, his head wrapped in a turban. He was a tall Sudanese African. He sat facing the Umma and in front, but between the bride's family and the groom's family. He had a small table at his side and the Holy Quran mounted on a carved wooden stand. After his salutations to Allah, he offered the khutbah, which is the spiritual message, exclusively in the Arabic language. It is the responsibility of a Muslim man to be the guardian of his wife and family. In today's times, the non-believers scream, "Why marriage? Why limit myself? Why bother?" In Islam, we have always had a tradition of marriage. We marry, however, not because it is a tradition, but because Allah requires this from us, and Allah is the best knower of all things, and Allah always commands us to do what is best for us, whether we know it or not. The arrogant will scream, "I know what's best for me. I don't care what is best for everybody else." But a person who is arrogant is also ignorant. Otherwise, arrogance would not be his chosen way of life. We marry because a complete family is the foundation of life and civilization. Where there is a man who willingly bows down to Allah and voluntarily obeys Allah's laws, there is a man capable of respecting limits, of being a good husband, the responsible party, and good father. Not sometimes, but each and every day. A woman who bows down to Allah and obeys Allah's laws is a good woman who is modest, wise, and mature of intellect. Women who are wise are the opposite of boastful, conceited, and flagrant. And a boastful, conceited, and flagrant woman is never necessarily intelligent. Where there is a humble man who accepts the limits imposed on him by God, a man who bows his head in prayer, thought, and praise, along with a modest woman who observes her limits and bows her head in prayer, thought, and praise, happy children can be born to live happy and balanced lives. Happy and balanced children respect their parents because it was their parents who cultivated their knowledge of Allah. Happy children, in turn, bow their heads in prayer, thought, and praise as they witnessed their parents do. Among the arrogant, ignorant, proud, and boastful, non-believing people, there are born nations of unhappy children, living unbalanced lives, drowning in depression and anxieties, children who love things more than they love the womb which bore them. Arrogant, ignorant men make horrible husbands to their wives, whether they are rich or poor. They make horrible fathers to their children, are full of fancy and deceitful words and promises, but they are only capable of the no-show. Even with a pocket or bank filled with money in their name, they can only pay out in pain and sadness. There's a short life for them on earth and an eternal and roaring fire in their future. Immodest, boastful women of no shame and no limits make horrifying wives and mothers who can only make themselves look and appear good. but they are rotten on the insides, and in their wombs is only misery. But enough of this. Today is a celebration of the Muslim man and this Muslim woman who together will bow their heads in prayer and thought and praise to Allah, who have both agreed to live their lives and conduct themselves in accordance with Allah's laws. Inshallah, they will bring forth many happy children who will live good lives and do good things and humble themselves in prayer and thought and praise of Allah too. Each of his words fell like large rocks on my shoulders and head. I was reminded of what I must do and in which order I must do it, but I was not 100% confident that I could get it right. My eyes surveyed the people in the room as Imam Musa carried out the asking and answering of the questions to the bride and groom. There was Fawzi and his father and mother seated beside him. I could see now that he also had 3 sisters who were older than him as well. He was not only the son, but he was the baby of his family. Still, he looked strong, seated up there with his family, including his uncle and aunt and their 2 sons and 3 daughters. This scenario reminded me of my father posing for a rare photo we had taken at our estate on the last day that I saw him. It was my father standing beside Umma, his first wife, and Amada, his second wife, and Hanifa, his third wife. My northern grandfather was there. My Umma's 2 brothers were there with their children, cousins, of course, and babies. Brothers and sisters with an unborn Naja lying safely in a welcoming womb. In the delight of the completed signatures and Ajid agreement, I caught a glance of Akemi, who held on to Umma as if they had known each other for years. I thought to myself, ain't nothing wrong with that. Mr. Ghazali and I had to go. He said we would take one of the town cars and head to Westchester, which was the wedding ceremony site. We needed to check with our eyes to assure that everything was perfect for tomorrow. This evening was the spiritual seal, he said. Tonight is the party for the groom and his male family and friends, and another for the bride and her female family and friends. Tomorrow is the splendor. He had a genuine energy, excitement, and happiness about his nephew's wedding, even though I can easily see that the greatest portion of their extended family's wealth was in his older brother's hands. I felt nothing but love and commitment coming from Mr. Ghazali towards all of his family members. I thought, however, that the splendor would be when the groom finally gets to lift the veil of his wife in privacy and gets to know his peace. Umma's eyes moved over me carefully as I stood before her and Akemi. Then her eyes moved over Akemi as well, then back and forth like a ping-pong match.
Akemi can remain with me while you go handle the business,
she said.
We have to return to the palace for the bride's henna.
Henna? I asked, wondering.
It's a party for the bride. Women only. We will bathe her. I will prepare her and paint on her henna. You will see. You will see the results tomorrow night in the wedding ceremony,
Umma said, speaking only in Arabic. And Akemi? I have to bring her back home to her family tonight, I said.
When you are finished working, return to the palace. Phone up to the penthouse. Akemi and Naja will come down. You can take Naja along with you as you return Akemi to her home,
she said softly. No matter how gently she spoke, I knew this is how it needed to happen. No negotiations. The smooth ride of the Lincoln town car lulled Naja to sleep. Of course, she sat in between Akemi and I, falling off into Akemi's lap the same as she would if it were Umma. As the driver sped around the deep curves of Edgewater and up into the cliffs of Englewood, Akemi placed the palm of her hand onto the back of my neck. Through flashes of light provided by ignited signs of random street lamps, we looked into one another deeply. Her hair was down now, falling mostly on her left shoulder. The scarf was in the palm of her left hand. Her $1 million shoes were off. Her pretty feet rested on the car carpet. Her toes were nicely shaped, nails clear with the hint of a polished gray tint, just like her fingernails. Her feet looked soft and beautiful, like the inside of her thighs. Sensations were flowing through my body as she caressed my ears and touched the side of my face. The West African driver appeared oblivious to everything except the road. If she kept it up, I would not be able to stand up when the car stopped. Right now, the only thing separating me from the long sermon of Imam Musa was my respect for my young sister and the wrong impression I would have caused if she woke up and saw me all over Akemi, giving in to my intense feelings. I knew I could not hold on to this warm 16-year-old female by keeping her waiting and desiring and in a holding pattern. Finally, parked in front of the palm tree on Honeysuckle Lane, the driver shifted gears into reverse and landed us in front of the long path to her cousin's house, which was lit up by small metal lamps that led to the front door. The driver hopped out to open my door. "I got it. Good looking out," I told him, so he would get back in his seat. I got out instead and moved around the back of the car to her side. I opened the door and helped her place her pretty feet back into her shoes. I awoke Naja to free up Akemi's lap. She climbed out dazed and dizzy. She awakened slowly as the spring night chill alerted her senses. I extended my hand for Akemi. She came willingly. "Pop the trunk," I told the driver, grabbing Akemi's shopping bag of items she had collected at the bride's party and probably from Umma as well. We three walked up her path quietly. Akemi's hand held on to the back of my belt. Her body was brushing up against my back with our every step.
"Nice house,"
Naja said.
"Are we going inside?"
"No, the driver is waiting for us. I'll take you right back to the palace with Umma," I told her. In front of the door, I reached into my inside jacket pocket and pulled out an engraved wedding invitation. I handed it to Akemi and said, "If you would like to come to the wedding tomorrow, I would love to see you." I smiled at her in the dark, knowing that she could not understand. She smiled at me too.
"She doesn't speak English. I thought you already knew,"
Naja informed me. Half a second later, her cousin pulled open the front door.
"Whose car is that?"
she interrogated without a proper greeting. "Ours," I answered.
"It's almost midnight,"
she said. Instantly, Akemi began speaking to her softly in their language. I interrupted them. "I have to leave now. Good night," I said.
"Good night,"
her cousin said hurriedly like,
"Sure, go."
"The wedding is tomorrow evening. If Akemi would like to come, we can meet at the palace in the lobby at 3 p.m. We were there today. Akemi knows where it is," I said to the cousin as I grabbed my sister's hand to leave.
"Wedding?"
Her cousin raised her voice. I smiled, realizing she didn't know. "Not me and Akemi's wedding tomorrow. Maybe some other day," I teased. "Just look on the invitation. Akemi has it in her hand," I said. "If she can't come, it's okay." Chapter 30. The next morning at 8 a.m., I was on the grounds of the wedding ceremony. In true form to Sudanese weddings, the gathering will not begin until 5 p.m. in hopes of really getting it moving by 6 p.m. Sudanese are known to work hard, but when it came to celebrations and parties, the festivities started late and will go on well into the early morning. I put in 6 hours, accepted the deliveries, and squared the independent contractors away properly. Umma was given 6 or 7 workers to carry out her instructions for the day. She told me, and then I told them exactly what to do. When everything was the way she wanted it, I called the car service and we were taken back to the Palace Hotel. We needed to shower again and dress there. Our clothes were in Umma's room, and Umma had to ride back up to the wedding with the arriving bride after making certain she was a perfect vision. Fozzie's barber hit me with a fresh lineup at the hotel, the last in a long line of priority heads. The shower water refreshed me. I was feeling exhausted from the past week's heavy workload and brief sleeps, especially since I had only one more tailored suit. You see, no Sudanese would wear jeans, no matter how expensive they were, or kicks to a special occasion. Fresh dressed, I pressed the button for the elevator. When the doors opened, I got on. Standing in the corner, also writing down, was a pretty face and familiar set of eyes. It was Souljah, who served me at the Sudanese suites in the Bronx, the daughter of Mr. Ghazali. She moved her eyes from mine, and I did the same, as was customary. She spoke.
Salam,
She said.
I saw you yesterday evening at the mosque.
Yes, I was working for your father, I admitted.
You were looking very nice for a worker.
She smiled. And today you are looking very nice as the cousin of the groom, I said, swiftly interrupting her compliments towards me and showering them onto her instead.
That's funny,
she said with a laugh.
Do you really mean it?
The doors opened. Akemi was standing there, poised to enter the elevator. She smiled brightly. Akemi, I said, stepping out of the lobby.
Nice shoes,
Souljah complimented Akemi, looking down on her authentic dark blue alligator open-toe high heels, the straps crisscrossing across her pretty feet and up her ankle. Those shoes were more than nice. She doesn't speak English, I told Souljah.
Your girlfriend?
Souljah asked me with a coy half-smile. She knew it was a trick question, since she and I are both Muslim and are both not allowed to date outside of a marriage. Friend, I replied.
She looks more than a friend to me,
Souljah said comfortably, knowing that Akemi could not understand her. But looking at Akemi, I was certain that even though she could not understand the words, she could understand the moment.
No worries,
Souljah said sweetly, with a woman's sarcasm.
We are living in America now, and I have heard that in America, you can do anything. No rules.
She smiled, penetrating me with her Sudanese wildcat eyes, the rest of herself covered in a Sudanese forest green thobe, which accentuated that untamed feeling she let off. Breaking the moment, I chose to introduce them. Souljah, this is Akemi. Akemi, this is Souljah. They each said something, but both of their sets of erotic eyes were really doing all of the talking. Just then, Akemi's little angry translator from her uncle's store skipped into action.
What's going on here?
She asked, with her 2 fists balled up and on her hips. I was surprised to see her. She was dressed up like a sweet little princess with a bunch of ribbons in her hair. I didn't let her childlike looks fool me, though. I knew she was a firecracker. I put my arm around Akemi's waist. Souljah looked at me hard and said,
See you at the wedding.
All right then, was all I said. I took Akemi and her cousin up to Umma before the rumor spread that I was embracing a female in the lobby.
Mayonaka.
Akemi placed her hands gently on the girl's shoulders.
Sachi,
she said, introducing us. Konnichiwa, Sachi, I said.
You know, I speak a little English,
the little girl said with attitude. You're right, I said.
and you should thank me,
the little girl pushed. Why is that? I asked.
because without me, Akemi wouldn't even be here today. My father said,
Akemi's hand was over Sachi's mouth. It was the only thing that stopped Sachi from talking since she appeared in the hotel lobby. She knelt down to the little girl's height level. The curve of Akemi's legs pressed against her soft skill wave skirt, which covered most of her legs but was cut on a seductive angle. I admired the deep blue authentic alligator sash that crossed over her soft ruffled blue blouse and held her alligator skin knapsack in place on her back. It matched her shoes exactly. She must have gone shopping in that vault at Bergdorf's, I thought to myself. I couldn't overlook that she had covered her hair today. She wore a deep blue Hermes silk scarf tied tight to hold in her thick hair. Somehow with some scissors, I figured, she had shaped the extra material into the shape of a flower blossom, a head wrap unlike anything I had ever seen. Her sense of style was unique, attractive, and flawless. She spoke Japanese to the little girl. Whatever she told her, the little girl made a mean face at first, but then straightened up. I really didn't want to cause Akemi any problems with her family. Yet, I had been working so hard over these past few days, and that was what I had to concentrate on to complete the job and reap the reward for Umma and my family. Naja was excited to meet Sachi. Sachi greeted and treated Naja better than I had seen her treat anybody else. I escorted them to Umma. I left them, all my ladies, there together. I got right back into work mode. There's this sound that Sudanese women make with the waving of their tongue that causes everyone everywhere to stop, listen, and take notice. I had not heard it in 7 years. I was hearing it now, not from one woman, but 600 females, from the youngest to the eldest, tongues waving a shrilling high sound. The wedding was about to begin. The piercing call of the women brought on the frantic drumming from the men. The scent of Umma's perfumes and elixirs intoxicated the air. Lemongrass was used to repel the insects. Sandalwood and jasmine were to lure the people and hold them there. There was an explosion of colors, every shade, pattern, and blend imaginable except red and gold, which was traditionally reserved for the bride. The Sudanese women were the only ones more beautiful than the 10,000 gardenias, orchids, and roses which were hanging, sprinkled, and dangling everywhere. The Sudanese men, tall, strong, and adorned in fabulous fabrics, some with turbans, some with kufis, some bareheaded, move in the procession with an excited coolness. It was an army, I thought to myself, yet I wondered where they all had come from and why were so many of them living here in America now. I smiled, realizing that only a wedding could draw them out in these great numbers. Otherwise, these proud Sudanese men would all be hard-working, hidden, anonymous, and invisible to everyone except their families because of the way we tend to separate ourselves from anything unfamiliar. Still, we were all here, living in America, gathered at a wedding, enjoying yet wishing we were back home, I'm sure. No one except Umma could have created a beautiful Sudanese village right there in Westchester. The sea of genuinely happy and excited people opened up under the curved tent that was the size of half of an American football field. It was not a standard white tent. The inside walls were adorned with red, yellow, and gold murals painted with passion by the 2 Iranian and 2 Sudanese painters. The explosion of colorful art made an already warm evening feel warmer and extremely welcoming. As the drumming eased down to a soft simmer, the people sat down in waves, some in chairs, some on stools, many on the huge royal red carpet which stretched across the lawn. 16 young Sudanese teen girls decked in tangerine thobes sang a song of prayer all together, their voices filled with emotion. Their hands were wrapped around thick circular gold candles. Hot wax gathered in a small pool at the top of each candle, yet below the flickering flame. 16 young Sudanese males, all dressed in brown and gold, recited the Fatiha all at once. The bride appeared, shimmering. She stood out like Sirius, the brightest star in the universe. The intricate gold embroidery brocade that lined her royal red thobe was unmatched. The red sheer cloth which draped over her hair and body had the gold beadwork carefully placed to highlight her beauty. On her face were a line of gold beads that stretched across her forehead, featuring her exquisite green eyes, which were outlined with the back coal. Her cinnamon skin color was a perfect canvas for Umma's artwork. She tilted her head downward and placed one hand over her face. Her fingers, hands, and palms now revealed the elegance of Umma's carefully drawn henna. Her wrist was glistening with the 10 diamond bangles, which not one of 3,000 eyes failed to notice. Prisms of the colors sparkled from them and were dancing throughout the crowd. Her other hand, down at her side, jingled with 10 24-karat gold bangles, which were banging also. The soft, light cloth of her garment suggested a beautiful figure, but did not give it all away. Fawzi is fortunate, I thought. So far, his parents had not disappointed him. The bride was facing both her mother and father. She dropped down and kissed their knees as an acknowledgement and show of respect. Also with her were her 4 younger sisters and 4 brothers, all of whom had come to the U.S. for their first time and only for their sister's wedding. How powerful their father must feel, I thought to myself, to have brought forth 9 children, to have raised his eldest 17-year-old daughter properly under his careful eye, to give her hand in such a grand gathering to such a successful man and family. The father had been a careful planner. Allah had given him a great sign of approval. I believed every person was either reflecting on their own wedding or dreaming of what was to come and hoping that it could be half as perfect for them also. Right across from the huge tent was their newly built home, a sturdy American mansion made of bricks. Fawzi and his wife would be the first to have ever lived in the house, which Umma had wrapped in a 3-foot wide ribbon that was also 20,000 feet long, culminating in a huge bow that was mounted on their front door. Outside of their new home was a stone water fountain that continuously sprayed water into the air, caught it on one of its stone shelves, and let it flow down, dribbling and gurgling like a stream. Of course, there was a huge black iron electric gate that secured his acres, but the gate was wide open to everyone, for today, a Sudanese wedding welcomes the community to the happiest day in a man's life outside of the birth of his daughter or son. Even curious neighbors would not have been turned away on the wedding day. Fawzi and his bride sat on a king-size mattress blanketed with a wickedly patterned red and gold crocheted cover which Umma stitched. On top of the crocheting were pounds and pounds of rose petals. At the center of the tent, they sat declaring their oaths to one another under the guide of their guardians and imam. The word Kabul was spoken by Fawzi and his bride, then repeated by many in celebration, signaling the completion of the official aspect of the wedding. Umma stood up front and off to the side, watching everything with a critical eye. I thought it would be impossible for her to find one flaw. She had done a tremendous job of expressing a culture that she knew and lived so well. Wearing sky blue, she was behind both her hijab and niqab today, her identity shielded, just an incredible set of eyes, an artist, a supervisor, a worker, a woman who wanted to be left alone with her memories, feelings, and thoughts more than she wanted to be recognized and commended. As the live band played, every comfort was made available to the huge crowd courtesy of Fawzi's family finances and Umma Designs. There was an elaborate stretch of tables covered in fine cloths which offered all Sudanese foods catered by the North African Food Company. There was a spread of breads, cheeses, and chutneys, sauces, soups, beans, lentils, olives, salads, vegetables, and stews. There were grilling stations offering chicken, beef, and lamb. There were dessert stations offering creams, custards, caramels, yogurts, finger cakes, and sorbets. There were fruit stations offering mangoes, guavas, dates, oranges, apples, hibiscus, and lemon. There were Sudanese drink stations offering Aradi, Maza, Karkade, Mirinda, and Stim. There was the tea lady and the coffee bean fryer. There were water and ice stations. People could become full on the aroma of this elaborate feast alone. In business mode, I worked the crowd as the party jumped off. I introduced myself as part of the wedding planning team while handing out business cards to brothers, sons, uncles, cousins, and fathers. In some instances, I collected their cards as well. The bride performed an erotic celebration dance for her new husband, surrounded by a curtain of colorful cloths held up by her female friends, and I could hear their cheering. As I continued my networking, I would whiz by people speaking all kinds of different languages and dialects. Parts of conversations would capture my attention.
Yes, he had the house built. It was $1 million for the property and another $1 million for the house.
US dollars? They chuckled at the unimaginable sum for the average worker. Years ago, my father's wealth was viewed with the same type of awe when compared to the amounts earned by the average Sudanese family living in the Sudan.
Back home, for that amount of money, he could have lived forever like a king, owning land stretching as far as he could see. Look at the few acres such big numbers buys him here. Inshallah, he will survive this purchase. What he'll pay each year in property taxes alone will be more than I pay to rent my entire apartment for the year.
I was listening carefully. Now realized that the house and the property could cost two separate large sums. Even after you officially buy and own the land, you still have to pay the U.S. government a large property tax. It didn't sound fair, yet it sounded true.
No worries. The bank gave him a huge loan. When he pays the mortgage, the price of the loan repayment, the interest on the loan, house insurance, and property tax costs are all included.
That's not free money. You make it sound so easy.
Well, he's got 30 years to pay it back.
I felt myself sinking into the lawn under the weight of these words. I could feel that they were not exaggerated. They were the details that men discuss between themselves. These were the burdens that men must carry quietly.
He's a big man, son of a bigger man, from a good family. He'll do just fine,
one of the men speaking said, gesturing wildly like he was speaking to the deaf. It was the eldest man of 80 years or more who made the startling prediction. When he adds up the price of a Sudanese bride, clothes, jewels, the honeymoon, and the 6 kids that will come out in the first 6 years or less, he'll go crazy and die of an American heart attack at age 34. Allah forbid, the others said all at once.
He has a PhD in chemical engineering. He will be more wealthy than he is right now in no time. America will pay him handsomely to make bombs for them to drop all over the world.
Even on the Sudan? The elder asked. Everyone grew quiet. Sudana snuck up on me.
I saw you from across the room. You look thirsty,
she said, offering me a glass of guava juice. Thank you. You seem to always be seeing me.
Can I prepare a plate of food for you?
She asked. No, thank you, I told her. She looked disappointed. She paused, then regrouped. Standing beside me, but with her body turned away as though she and I were not actually conversing, she said,
She's pretty and she's probably smart too, must be. But is she Sudanese?
She asked. I smiled, knowing she was speaking about Akemi. I didn't answer. I knew where she was heading with it. Every Sudanese will tell the other, marry Sudanese and no one else. Only a Sudanese woman will share your beliefs, language, traditions, and know what is expected of her. Only a Sudanese woman would know, most importantly, what not to do.
Is she even Muslim?
Sudana said softly. She doesn't have to be. You know, a Muslim man can marry a non-Muslim woman because she will follow his lead. But you can never marry a non-Muslim man because he will surely mislead you, I said, smiling.
So clever,
she responded and walked away into the crowd. Not as clever as you, I thought to myself. I wasn't mad at Sudana, but I wouldn't play with her either. Sudanese women receive our highest respect. She is also the daughter of the man with whom I was doing the biggest business our company has ever done. Why should I lie to her when my whole everything was caught up and locked into Akemi so tight? Sudana couldn't possibly know. I didn't pick Akemi because she was not Muslim or not Sudanese. Akemi just happened to me like how a day radiant with sunshine converts into a downpour of rain in seconds. Now I was drenched, and I liked it. Akemi felt good and true and right for me in every way. As I walked, I spotted the Imam head on. I also saw Sudana place herself right beside Akemi on the other side of the tent. They stood together like 2 gazelles. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Musa. I have a question, please, I asked her respectfully. Alaikum assalam, young brother. He nodded me on. What age does a male have to be to marry? I asked. He smiled. The wedding has inspired you, he asked. I was inspired before the wedding. I heard your khutbah last night. I want to do what is right before I do what is wrong. Do you follow my words? I asked him. Of course, he said solemnly. Your holy Quran does not give an age for marriage. It is only that you are required to be of the age of puberty, he said, watching for my reaction. Then is it legal? I asked. Can a 14-year-old take a wife? I asked again. There's a difference between Allah's law and the law of this United States, he said. Allah requires that you marry a female before engaging in sexual intercourse. Sex with any woman who is not your wife is haram, forbidden. The United States does not require marriage for sexual intercourse. It simply requires that an adult not have sex with a child. In this state of New York, legally you can marry at age 15 with your parents' permission and the permission of the parents of the bride if she is also young. At 14, however, you cannot marry legally in the state of New York. What is the rush? He asked. I didn't answer, just looked into his eyes solemnly. As a man, more than an imam, I was sure he knew what the rush was about. Self-restraint can be achieved through fasting, he suggested. If you fast, Allah will reduce your desires so that you might control yourself. In my view, the opportunity to have sexual intercourse freely should not be the only reason you take a wife. He waited for me to say something in response, but I was racing into my own thoughts. In July, on the 27th, I would turn 15 years old. This was only 3 months away, yet I didn't know when Akemi's birth date was. And then, of course, the permission of both of our parents was the problem. I could barely get an audience with her uncles, and the fact that her father was overseas was a huge dilemma. How could I win his confidence that I am his daughter's match? Take a look around, son. Fawzi's father has been working, planning, and saving for this great occasion since his son's birth for more than 2 decades. Even the groom has done his part. He studied diligently and worked very hard. It takes patience and determination to attain certain things and levels in life, the Imam said. But a poor man may take a wife and marry and love her. If he is a good man, would she follow him even into a mud hut? I asked, borrowing Fawzi's lines. A good woman will marry a good man and follow him wherever he may lead. This is true, the Imam offered. 2 male witnesses or 1 male and 2 female witnesses, and to recite the nikah and give the mahr is all that Allah requires. And if a poor man who has reached puberty chooses a wife, he can still work hard and achieve wealth and the blessings of Allah, can he? Choosing a wife does not make him poor, right? A good wife makes the poorest of men wealthy. You are right, the Imam agreed. Shukran, Imam Musa said, thanking him. He gave me his card. Sachi dashed by. Naja chased her. Some woman must have fallen in love with Sachi and draped a hijab over her head. Now Sachi's hair was covered just as Naja's was. By the night's end, the guests were filled to the brim. The children were exhausted from running, clapping, singing, playing jump rope, double dutch, and double orange. The males were checking their watches and easing their families away in preparation for Monday morning. The beautiful ribbon was cut. The bowl busted open. Fawzi escorted his wife into their new home for her first time.
In his new house, Fawzi will remove her shoes and wash her feet,
Umma said, standing beside me, seeming to reminisce. Mr. Ghazali appeared, resting his hand on my shoulder, smiling and sighing with great approval. It is time to settle our accounts, young man. I have to travel back to the Bronx with my family. There's work and school tomorrow. For you, too. He checked his Timex. It's already the next day, really, he said with a tired smile. After I counted and recounted the final payment of $5,000 cash in his presence, I pulled out his receipt, which I already written up. Our business card was stapled on top. Thank you for choosing Umma Designs, I said. We are forever grateful for your business. If you are satisfied with our work, please do not hesitate to recommend our services to a friend or co-worker. We shook hands. Your work will recommend itself. Everyone has personally witnessed what your company has done. You will have an abundance of business in the near future, I'm sure. He leaned in with a laugh and said, Maybe I should fire my sons and hire you. The cleaning company will arrive in the morning, and the canopy company, the commode company, and the North African food company representatives will come to collect their supplies. Would you like me to meet you here in the morning? I asked. Wow, you have the money in your hands and you're still offering your services, huh? Join me, he said, with a new burst of energy and a slap to my back. Thank you for the offer, but I'm good working for Umma. You know, family comes first, I told him. We were both speaking in Arabic. He leaned in again as though he was about to share a big secret with me. The driver of the town car number 19 out front will chauffeur you and your family back to the Palace Hotel, courtesy of Mr. Ghazali. Get a good night's rest. Check out at noon tomorrow. Your duties have been completed. May Allah keep you well.
Shukran, I told him, meaning thank you in Arabic. Umma, Akemi, and Naja were patiently waiting for me while Sachi skipped around the entire empty tent still bursting with energy, same as if it was a midday. I gestured and told them, 1 more minute, ladies. As I walked away to the 3-foot-tall vase where I stashed my gun underneath some wood chips earlier, to my surprise and alarm, it wasn't there. I searched again. I stood up thinking and worrying and reassuring myself that no one saw me drop it in there and that there would be no reason for anyone to go digging in one of the wedding props either. It didn't matter though. Either way, my joint was still missing. Sudana walked over, distracted me at a bad moment. Akemi saw Sudana from across the room. She was walking over toward me as well. Umma and Naja watched. Sachi was singing her version of one of the wedding songs she heard earlier.
I wrapped this up for you,
Sudana said, handing me a gift. It's okay, Sudana. Umma Designs provided the wedding gifts to the guests, so I don't need one. Akemi arrived. We stood there, the 3 of us.
Oh, I think you'll need this. I'm sure I have what you are looking for,
Sudana said, her wildcat eyes changing colors right before me. I stared at the nicely wrapped gift box in her open hand. Akemi stared too.
I would have held it for you all night if you asked me to,
Sudana said. I took the gift. Now I knew it was my gun. Thank you, Sudana. Really, and good night, I said, relieved.
There's no thank you between us,
She said with a smile.
There's no thank you between friends.
She smiled even more.
And we 3 are all friends, right?
She asked, then turned toward Akemi.
And good night, Akemi. Thank you for coming. It was a pleasure to meet you.
As she walked away, she waved politely, believing that Akemi could not decipher her flirtations. But I knew she was underestimating Akemi. Out front, it was fairly dark. I looked around, my eyes adjusting after having been in the bright lights in the yard. As soon as the town car pulled around, directly in front of Umma, I opened the door for her. I took her shopping bags. She got in. As Akemi stooped to get in with her bags, I grabbed her hand discreetly and pulled her towards me. I told Naja and Sachi to get in the car first instead. I took her shopping bags also, then walking Akemi around to the trunk. I knocked on the trunk door, signaling the driver to open up. As I packed in Umma's 2 full shopping bags, I tilted my head in the direction of the Japanese dude standing way across the street in the dark shadows underneath a newborn tree with slim branches. Without words, I was asking her if she recognized him. Akemi exhaled as she stared off in the Japanese guy's direction. By this time, I could see that there were 3 other dudes seated in that black Infiniti sedan parked over there, although I couldn't make their faces. She wasn't saying nothing, and for some reason, neither were they. I walked Akemi to our car door and pushed her inside the car with Umma. I left a shopping bag on the ground. I leaned in through the front passenger window and told the driver to give me 5 minutes. I stooped down as if I was tying my shoes and tore the paper from the gift and pulled out my .22. I left the box on the ground, stood up, and tucked my joint in my belt. I walked over there slowly, stopping halfway in the middle of the street, standing on a weird angle not to give them any advantage. I did not know this dude, but from what little I could see, I knew I didn't like his looks. In the dark, I asked, "What's up?" There was no wedding welcome or smile on my face or in the tone of my voice.
I came for Akemi,
he answered in a firm, emotionless voice that didn't sound right in my ear. Who are you to her? I asked. Now I had my right hand on my tool.
Their back car window rolled down, revealing the profile of Hiro and Kano, the two Japanese brothers I played basketball with in Jersey.
It's us, man. Uncle sent us to pick up Akemi. It's all right, man. No problem.
He seemed intimidated and was asking in a purposely polite tone with an innocent grin. The other cat under the tree still wasn't smiling, intimidated, or saying nothing. "Who is he?" I asked Hiro.
Our elder brother Ichiro,
Kano answered. My tension eased up slowly. I walked over to our car, tapped on the top of the car, and Akemi and Sachi crawled out. "Your family has come for you two," I told her. Akemi looked at me as if she wanted to stay with me, but I was sending her back home. That's how it goes. She belonged to her family unless I step up as a man the way the groom did today and take her away properly. And when a man takes a woman for his wife properly, no man can come take her anywhere or even speak a word to her without the husband's permission. Akemi reached in and hugged Umma.
Sayonara,
she said softly and smiled with regret. Umma kissed Akemi's cheek through the window. I handed her the shopping bag. Sachi ran over to her cousin's car, skipping happily, shouting,
"Good night, Naja. Next time I won't cheat, I promise."
The elder brother snatched the hijab off of Sachi's head as though a simple piece of cloth could turn her Muslim. Akemi walked over and extended her hand forward toward him, and he handed the hijab to her. Akemi folded it nicely and placed it with everything else she had collected. She waved goodnight to me. She got in the car. The elder brother jumped in the driver's seat and sped off. As I got into the front seat of our car, Mr. Ghazali and Sudana stood watching in the distance on the grass. I adjusted my frame of mind and gave them a second good night. In the car, I told the driver to take us to the Palace Hotel in Manhattan. He responded no problem, then pulled off slowly. I knew if I had announced our Brooklyn address instead, he would have been making excuses just to keep from traveling into the area. The clock on his dashboard read 12:49 a.m. Naja wasted no time nodding off up against Umma. Umma rested her head on the headrest, her eyes closed but not asleep. "You did an incredible job, Umma," I complimented her. She smiled, with her head still tilted. "I got a business card from the wedding photographer. I convinced him to take some close-ups of the clothes you designed. I gave him a $35 deposit. He said we could pick up the photos next week. I set it up so you can use the pictures as samples of your work for your new clients. After tonight, you'll definitely have some new clients," I assured her. She opened her eyes finally and took a good long look at me. I could tell she wasn't thinking about her business at the moment, but she also knew I wasn't ready to talk about Akemi right then. My mother is smart and sweet, so she let the topic go and just said
Inshallah.
in response to the possibilities of the new business ventures. At the Palace Hotel, we didn't get settled in until around 3:10 a.m. I didn't see a possible way for Umma to awaken for work at 5 a.m. as she usually would. When I phoned downstairs for our wake-up call, Umma said,
tomorrow, no work, no school.
I was surprised because since we arrived in the U.S. and she began working, she had never missed one day of work. Even I had not missed one day of work at my part-time job at Cho's.
I am working the night shift starting tomorrow, 4 p.m. until midnight, Tuesday through Saturday. I arranged this in advance, switched shifts with my Lebanese coworker, only for 1 week,
she said, drifting off to sleep. From the floor where I laid, I answered, "No problem. I'll take you every afternoon and pick you up every midnight." She said softly,
Praise Allah.
The next afternoon, Umma and Naja were still sleeping. I stepped around the hotel room quietly, washed up, and dressed. At the front desk, I checked us out and off of Fawzi's father's tab. I asked the front desk clerk the price of one additional night stay.
It would cost $275 per night for a single room,
he answered.
$300 for the double like the one you checked out of.
Are those your lowest available prices, I asked.
Absolutely, he responded. Our rooms range from $275 up to $5,000 per night for the penthouse this week,
he emphasized. He seemed to get an extreme charge out of reciting the fees. It was like he enjoyed crushing the customer who couldn't afford it. I was sure that he couldn't afford a room in his hotel where he worked either. I went into my pocket and pulled out my personal money and laid it on the counter to check back into the same double room at my own expense. I knew it was only one night and not an investment that offered any financial return. However, I found myself feeling f***ed up about possibly having to wake my family and rush them back onto our Brooklyn block. The thought of returning home made my muscles tighten. I felt Umma deserved so much more after the immense job she had just completed, and if she took a day off along with Naja, I would help them to relax and feel good and be happy, my treat. As she slept, I glanced at her, my Umma. I wanted to give her something. I found myself asking myself, what can you give a woman who has already experienced a tremendous love? Later on the Midtown Manhattan streets, Naja and I searched high and low for a bathing suit suitable for a little girl. Almost everything in the hotel shops were for grown American women. 3 blocks over and 11 blocks down and across, we found one right style and price. Naja didn't mind the long walk. She was just excited to the extreme from all of the celebrations, new acquaintances, and also having her brother to herself as Umma relaxed in privacy at the hotel. We had the hotel pool to ourselves, and I taught her how to swim that one afternoon. She wasn't afraid of the water. She caught on easily. I knew that for her to really become comfortable and good at it, she would need some daily or weekly practice. These were the kinds of things I wanted to be able to offer my sister. It wasn't about the cost, but it mattered what kind of program I would put her into, who was running it, and what kind of kids participated. I wanted to keep her ways pure.
Did you know that Umma can dance?
Naja asked me when we finished swimming and we were on the elevator riding up. Oh yeah? I responded, wondering.
At the henna, she danced for the ladies. She taught Maha how to dance for her new husband, Fozzie. I watched her. I couldn't believe it was Mommy,
she said.
And the clothes she wore. You should have seen. She wore a bra with silver glitter. It shined. She had a necklace around her belly and a jewel right here.
Naja stuck her finger in her own belly button through her towel and swimsuit. Did the ladies tell you to tell everybody what went on at that private ladies' party?
Nope,
she answered.
But I never saw Umma have that much fun before. All of the ladies were clapping for her. Us little girls, too. There were 5 of us,
she said.
I saw the bride naked. Umma massaged her skin in oils, even her feet. I wanted to do her hair, but they wouldn't let me. I hope when I get married, there will be so many friends there to treat me so special and help out.
You're still telling all of the ladies' secrets, I scolded her.
But I'm telling you. You said there was no secrets between me, you, and Umma.
As we walked down the hallway towards our room, Naja stopped telling her story of the henna party, which made me believe she knew from the start that she wasn't supposed to be telling in the first place. In the room, Umma was still in her pink satin pajamas, her hair out and down her back and her feet exposed. It was strange to see my mother from a different angle. The one that Naja was trying to show me. I always knew that she was so beautiful. I always had the privilege to observe that. But since we lived back home in Africa, seeing her in love with my father and playful with him and he with her, I had not thought of her as more than a mother. And a mother is as close to a supreme being as a human can be. So to imagine her hips swinging and swaying, hypnotizing the younger ladies with her charms was a foreign thought. We made afternoon prayer together, the 3 of us. Umma changed into a pale yellow dress and a startling yellow thobe. No hijab or niqab today, yet still covered, of course. She wore a 2-inch heeled brown leather shoe and matching bag. I could tell she was feeling good, relieved, and free. I took them out for pasta at a nice Italian restaurant. The food was so enjoyable, but there is always the problem of the Italian men's hostility towards the African male and fascination and lust for the African woman. I turned down the table they offered. I sat Umma in the corner table, sitting opposite her to block their view. Our server was captivated by the designs on Umma's hands. I thought to myself there will be 2 more months of this unwanted attention. That's how long Umma said the henna would last.
It's so nice out,
Umma remarked.
We should take advantage of this week and find ourselves a house,
She said. I pulled the folded portion of the newspaper out of my pocket. I circled the ones that are in our price range, I said, laying the newspaper on a free space on the table. Did you know that the land and the house could be 2 separate prices, and there are still the property taxes to pay? I asked her. She smiled.
It's okay. We're not buying the kind of property and house that Fawzi purchased in Westchester. A small piece of land with a decent-sized backyard for Naja to play in, a fence of course, and 3 bedrooms. 1 bedroom is for me, and the other bedroom is for Naja. The 3rd bedroom will be where I get my sewing work done and keep my supplies like an office.
She paused and sipped from her water glass, but then she didn't say anything. And your son? I asked. Where will your son go?
From the looks of things, my son will go wherever Akemi goes.
She smiled. Naja laughed. I broke out in an uncontrollable smile myself. She definitely took me by surprise.
Perhaps there will be a finished basement or attic for the 2 of you, and you recite the nikah together. You will both be welcome there, of course,
she said, blowing my mind. I spoke to the imam. He said the New York state law requires a man to be 15 to marry, and only with both parents' permission, I informed her.
There is New York state law, and there is Allah's law. Allah's law is the highest law. It is best for you two to recite the nikah and for you to take a wife than to corrupt yourselves and bring forth a chaos baby,
Umma said.
2 or 3 witnesses and it's done. You 2 will be married.
She drank from the water glass once more.
Yes, you are young, but you are mature, really. There's no finer young man in this country than you, my son. And we are business people. We make our own money. We make our own way. I am certain that you can and will provide nicely for our new household.
Naja's eyes and ears were wide open. Today was a day of firsts. Later on was the first time I saw Umma working out in the gymnasium. She ran on the treadmill with her eyes closed, wearing pants, one of my long shirts, and a scarf. I pushed the weights, worked the circuit, while Naja tried to walk across the floor on her hands. Late night, while Naja slept, Umma and I sat on the floor together, diving into the details of our real lives, no fantasies.
Wherever we move, Naja has to have a good school. I really don't want to take her out of Islamic schooling,
Umma said. We can ask at her school if they have information about other Islamic schools in the state, I added.
True. You know, Tamara Auntie has told me that there are many Sudanese people living in upstate New York and in Philadelphia and the Washington, D.C. area. They must send their children somewhere to be properly trained. But Tamara Auntie said that the daughters of African people, especially in Washington, D.C., are down there losing their dignity.
So you and Tamara Auntie are friends now? Or just business acquaintances, I asked.
She could be a friend, I guess,
Umma ventured. I could arrange for us to see some properties on Wednesday very early after we drop Naja off.
Good,
Umma agreed.
And there is the small matter of getting our citizenship papers. You remember? We completed our applications together and went for fingerprinting.
No one forgets being fingerprinted, I said.
So it's time to go in and get our citizenship papers,
she reminded me. Yes, I remember. I'll go to City Hall and get the updated list of requirements I promised.
Good, because since your sister was born here, she is an American citizen. Allah forbid something crazy or unexpected happens. You and I would get deported, and only she would have the legal right to remain here. They could force us to be separated from Naja.
She said these words so seriously, it seemed that she was experiencing a piece of the pain from the thought alone. I'll get the papers for us, I reassured her. And you should consider taking an English course, I said to Umma.
You're funny,
she said, laughing.
Your mother speaks only Arabic. Your love speaks only Japanese.
True, and both of you will have to learn if we're going to stay in the U.S. Otherwise, you'll both worry me to death, I said seriously. She hugged me.
I'll do it for you,
she said. The young bank teller, who sat at the same window every day, broke out of her mechanical routine and got soft and friendly when I handed in the dough. When she looked up and smiled at me, I gave her that mechanical look she usually has plastered on her face. As I turned to leave, I thought to myself, it must be the money. In the taxi waiting for me outside, I handed Umma the passbook. I pointed out the new stamp confirming our new bank balance, $85,000. We dropped Naja directly at Khadija's School for Islamic Girls. Afterwards, we directed our cab to the address of the dojo. I needed to speak directly with Sensei about rescheduling my weapons class. He was strict about his students keeping their word and honoring their agreements. So was I. We rescheduled and agreed on weapons class for Thursday at 8 a.m. until 12 noon. I think he considered my punishment for rescheduling to be the extra early morning class and the extra 2 hours of instruction. But there was no punishment in it for me. I was ready to learn whatever he was willing to teach. At home, we unpacked and resituated things. I showered and jumped back into jeans and kicks and a polo shirt. We prayed. By telephone, I made the appointments for us to see some properties tomorrow. In our building, I spoke to Miss Marcy about our scheduling changes for the week due to Umma's temporary night shift. She eagerly agreed for Naja's sake and the extra earnings as well. I spoke sharply to her about getting enough rest so she wouldn't leave Naja unsupervised while she slept. I reminded her that only she should answer her door, and even then there was no reason to open it. I escorted Umma to work by 3:45 p.m. She went in 15 minutes early. Chapter 31. I had some downtime until basketball practice at the gym, so I headed to the bookstore feeling alright, but with a whole lot of shit on my mind.
Long time,
Marty Bookbinder said.
Don't I deserve a rematch?
He asked me. A rematch is cool, but I hope you've been practicing, I joked.
All day? I got nothing better to do.
He smiled. Thursday then, I'll come by. Today, I need to do some reading. He watched me as I changed from my usual path, which was to check out the mystery books first. I turned and looked back at him, jarring him so he wouldn't mind his business. All of the adult magazines were covered up with paper so you couldn't see the images until after you made the purchase. They were always there in the bookstore in the same adults-only quote-unquote section, but I never messed with them or even stopped to try and look. Now, curiosity had me open. It wasn't really the pictures I wanted. I wanted to read about females, what they want and what they like. I wanted to learn about how to make them feel good. I wanted to know when I put my finger on her panties, why did she suddenly get wet? I wanted to know why on the phone and whenever I was near her, she breathed so hard. I wanted to know why she moaned and what really triggered it to happen. I wanted to know everything about women without having a conversation about it. I knew I could just rely on my instincts about what to do. I could just deal with each situation as it came up. Yet, when I looked into these females' eyes, they stared at me like I was gonna give them the most extreme amount of pleasure imaginable, the highest high. Truthfully, I wanted to be able to do it right and smooth so she could feel real good. When she thought of the best earthly feeling in the world, I wanted her to think only of me. I knew that when I kissed Akemi, she started sucking on my lips and tongue. It felt so good to me that I found myself recalling the feeling and re-experience it when I was all alone. Her kiss alone left a deep craving in me. I wanted to be kissing her all of the time. I didn't need no magazine or book to feel and react to that. Still, I was curious about the female body, the inside, and how it worked. I wanted the upper hand, to be in control of the lovemaking, even though I didn't have the experience. I left out of the adults-only section and found a human anatomy book instead. It was corny, dry, and factual. The drawings of the human body in there didn't seem real. All of the women were red. All of the men were drawn blue. It was hard for me to look at their drawings and transform them into what I saw when I looked at a real female. I read the words anyway. I discovered a woman's pleasure point. It was all news to me. A small spot like a button at the opening of the hanaj, which a male could touch, even just slightly with a finger, to bring a female a great rush of pleasure. And what if I put my tongue on it and moved it back and forth, I thought. I read about how a female's gets moist as she becomes excited, and that a female's pleasure is related to how relaxed, safe, and comfortable she feels. I read about a woman's soul and how they're also highly sensitive and become erect when she is excited. I was fascinated that even a light wind could cause a woman to plump up. I thought it was amazing of Allah to design our bodies to reveal our true desires, both of us, the females and the males. I learned about a woman's orgasm, the point where her pleasure becomes so intense and unbearable that she experiences an internal explosion and showers down fluids and feels an unbelievable release and peace. Wow! That's something I can't wait to cause to happen. I want to watch and see what a face looks like when I am there making it happen to her. I read about the difference between foreplay, touching, kissing, fingering, sucking, and actual sexual intercourse. I had to put the book down for a few to think about it all, and for other reasons. I started wondering if foreplay and sex could actually be separated. I did not think so. A kiss didn't seem casual to me. It seemed crazy intimate and erotic and powerful. When we kissed, she aroused me and made me feel aggressive, as though I could not stop myself. And in one conversation I had with Umma, she didn't think any of this was casual either. The way Umma talked about it after the first touch and feel of a woman's body, everything else is an avalanche. After the first touch, the momentum alone pushes and pulls and drags you to engage in and enjoy and finish. And what did the Imam Musa believe? I never read anything in the Holy Quran forbidding kissing, although I read about how it forbids sexual intercourse before marriage. So is kissing sexual and a part of sexual intercourse? Or does it fit a different category like this book says, foreplay? Could a female suck a dick and still be considered a virgin, I wondered? If I allowed a female to do me, does that mean we didn't have intercourse because I never actually went inside her, like Fawzi said? I read that a virgin has a hymen, a thin piece of skin over her. The first man to go up her without bursts the hymen and some blood should come streaming down. I never knew that before. I just knew in the streets a busted cherry meant a girl's first time having sex. Now I knew why. My mind wondering, I wondered about Akemi. I always thought of her as a virgin like myself. I always thought of her as someone who was into me and only me. She never gave me the feeling or any evidence that would lead me to think differently, not even a glance or interest in another man. Of course she is a virgin, I assured myself. She would have to be a virgin to become my wife. My wife. That's deep. I started thinking about my life, religion, and culture. Our Sudanese females are virgins until marriage. It's considered a woman's honor. I wondered why it didn't matter to American girls. Even American men didn't seem to give a if their woman was a straight-up used-up I wondered if maybe it didn't matter to anyone else except the Muslims. After a couple of hours of reading and thinking, I was only certain of one or two things. Based on what I felt under that big tree in Jersey when the touching and sucking jumped off, I would not think about any of the I read this afternoon. The foreplay and the sex would all be the same thing to me. It already was. When I looked at Akemi or any beautiful woman, it was sexual. I guess that's why the Muslim men and women are required to turn their eyes away from one another and dress with modesty. If I just watched Akemi moving her legs on the swing in an incredible yoga pose, walking, even just talking, it was all sexual and alluring to me. If I wanted to do things right in the required order as my family believes, I needed to get married swiftly. The only other alternative was for me to do nothing at all. I'd have to stay away from Akemi because the love would ease right into the touching. I'd have to stay away from even the females who I didn't love but whose physical presence turned me on. Once the seduction started, I noticed it was getting harder and harder for me to just turn away. Or I could just roll with it, be all in, be like an American man would be, and just start without thinking, just follow the pleasure feeling. In the book, I read about erogenous zones, other parts of a woman's body that might not be obvious but brought her great pleasure. But I discovered that for each woman, the erogenous zone could be in a different location. The crease in her inner thigh, the inner ear, the back of the neck, the toes. I was liking reading the part on aphrodisiacs. Aphrodisiacs are things which increase and intensify the feeling to want to have sex in the first place. The natural aphrodisiacs were things like various hot sauces and certain fruits, like the pomegranate or Chinese apple. Even chocolate is an aphrodisiac. I laughed to myself at how we all running around all day aroused and not even knowing we intensifying it by the items we choose to enjoy. Akemi had a pomegranate tree growing in the greenhouse in New Jersey, a whole tree dedicated to arousal. Afterwards, I found a small book. The cover and the pages inside were all colored black. The drawings were white. It was titled Positions. I opened it up. Each page showed a different sexual position, a different way to I looked at each of the 50 pages carefully. I wondered what was the difference between these positions and the yoga positions I saw Akemi do in the park. It all involved a great amount of flexibility. I knew that Akemi's body was as flexible as a rubber band and light. As an athlete, I could lift her body easily and move it however she wanted and liked it to be moved. Yeah, folks, pardon me. But we now gotta take a pause for the cause, because I'll need you folks to tune in to the next edition of Ralph Reads. I would like, or rather love, to thank you, queens and kings, fellow royalty, for stopping by. You may connect with me via Facebook. Send a friend request while you still can to Ralph Anthony Garcia on Twitter and Instagram at RGMC2407. Send an email to rgmc2407@gmail.com, where if you'd like to leave a small donation, please use the Zelle app or paypal.me/RGMC2407 or Cash App. My cash tag is RGMC2407. You may also connect with me on my other channel, the music channel, at RGMC2407, and right here on TURN. Tell a friend to tune in to the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Fellow royalty, pick up a good book, read a good story, and set your good self free. I appreciate you, and I love you like cooked food. I will see you folks on the continuation of the Sister Souljah miniseries on the next edition of Ralph Reads. Stay sexy. It becomes you.